All right, so here we are for part two. Excuse me, what's the beef with beef? So why is it when we talk about beef that everybody says beef gets a bad name? Well, perhaps it's because it takes a lot of water. You saw a graphic like this, which is from Denver Water, which says a cow eats thousands of pounds of grass, corn, grains, and soybean during her lifetime, and water is necessary to grow that diet. And that's where they come up with this idea that a pound of beef takes 1,847 gallons of water to grow, whereas vegetables only take 39 gallons. Not quite sure how they come up with milk at 122, but that's what they come up with. Perhaps you read Livestock's Long Shadow, which was published, I think, about 2008. So the livestock generate 14.5% of greenhouse gas emissions, which is more than the transportation sector. That's not very good. Perhaps you did a water footprint calculator like I did. Doing that for class one day, and this water footprint calculator told me that my family uses 1,440 gallons per day due to my meat consumption. Like, wait a minute. That's not right. It's not how much water my cattle and pigs and chickens drink. And I know it's not that much water because I haul the water every day. I took the water out of the tap and put it in the tank, and I know exactly how much water they got, and it wasn't 1,440 gallons. So I started looking into this. It's like, well, where'd this number come from? Well, if you dig into the data behind the website, it makes this presumption that all beef is raised in a feedlot and all milk comes from a confinement dairy. It's your only choices. That's why it uses water. And it uses that same amount of water all across the United States, regardless of what the physical environment is. Remember that part of the model. This is Virginia. It is not the same as Kansas, Nebraska, or California. So I did the numbers on our farm using the average water consumption for a beef cow or a beef steer from the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. A 2-year-old steer has an average lifetime weight of my farm of 505 pounds. That's the average from when he was born to when he died. That's the middle point. At 105 gallons of water, or 1.5 gallons of water per day per 100 pounds, times 365 days, times 2 years, that steer will drink 5,530 gallons of water. They'll produce about 350 pounds of beef when I get a good one. So 5,500 divided by 350 comes out to be 16 gallons per pound of beef produced. Wow. There's where my beef shows up. Now, even if I am wrong by a factor of 2, I am 100% wrong, and the cow drinks like 1,100 11,000 gallons of water during lifetime. That's 32 gallons per pound. I'm still better than vegetables. How about that? Trouble with Livestock's Long Shadow is it's wrong. Now, Steve Hart didn't say that. If Steve Hart did, you probably shouldn't listen. But right after it was published, a fellow from the University of California at Davis pointed out that there was a problem in the methodology. Livestock's Long Shadow used a life cycle analysis for cattle, so birth to death, the whole life, and a tailpipe emission for transportation, only what was blown out of the tailpipe. There's 2 different system boundaries. It's like comparing an apple and a football. Right? So those sort of roundish, but not. You can't compare those two. Now, just because somebody complained about it doesn't mean you should believe the complaint. However, one of the authors of Livestock's Long Shadow, when this was pointed out to him, said this. I must honestly say that he has a point. We factored in everything for meat emissions, and we didn't do the same for transport. We just used the figure from the IPCC. One of the other authors, Hennig Steinman, has written several articles pointing out the fact that, yes, we got it wrong. Now, this example is why it is so important to actually get things right the first time and not put something out that's wrong. That 14.5%, I want you to remember that number because we're going to see it again in this presentation. So if it's not 14.5%, what is it? Well, I pulled these stats from the US EPA just this week, And this is what the US EPA says. 29% of our emissions come from transportation, 25% from energy, 23% from industry, and 10% from all of agriculture. Well, how much of that is due to livestock? Well, the little chart right there, it's really hard to see. They didn't have a good graphic. Says that livestock is 38% of the 10%. Well, 38% of 10% is 3.8%. Is the total emissions due to all livestock. Now, if we actually want to make a difference in our greenhouse gas emissions, we have to operate on the big pieces of pie. And the big pieces of the pie are the 29, the 25, and the 23, not the 10 and not the 3.8. You can make a 50% change in that 3.8%, and overall you get like 1 and 1.7. You get very, very little overall change. You want to change something, you've got to operate on the big pieces of the pie. Now, I want to give you another choice. If you look at this debate the way it is typically played out in our media, and again, this is the information dimension. It's the information dimension of what we talk about. It's no meat, plant-based everything. That's one extreme. Industrial confinement commodity model, the cow put the cow in a box and it stays in the box his whole life and just shove food in the box and take meat out the back end. Those are your two choices. Well, if you ever read Hank the Cow Dog, Hank's always given Drover, his sidekick, two choices. Drover never likes either one of them. And the problem with this A or B, choose right now, methodology is it doesn't allow us to do something different. Well, what if I want to do something different? What if I want a different choice? And that's what I'm going to propose to you. Managed rotational grazing is an other choice. It's not the only other choice, but it's a choice. When I first heard about this, Tallgrass National Prairie in Kansas. We don't have national forests in Kansas. We have prairies because that's what's there. And a whole bunch of years ago, they actually found a stand of native prairie. It was small. It was around a schoolhouse. But oh my goodness, we have a treasure here. This is actual original native prairie, and so we need to preserve it. So they've preserved it, expanded it out, and have a wonderful museum there. Listen to a talk went all morning long about how they managed it. And what I learned was this. They said, when we first started doing this, we found a prairie. It's here. Let's take care of it. And they did. And they said the prairie was sick. I said, oh, this isn't good. That was their words, not mine. Sick prairie. What did we used to have that we don't have today on our prairie? Bison. So let's go get some bison. So they did. All right. Out in west where the buffalo roam, that's what they were doing. So they put the bison on there, and the bison started eating the grass. And they said, the prairie got a little bit better. I go, oh, this is cool. What else did we used to have? Fire. We used to have the prairie burning. Either by natural means or by man-made means, the prairie would burn. And so they started burning the prairie, not all at once, but they'd start controlled burns, which removed a bunch of the duft, removed all of that buildup that was building up on the top, that thatch that prevented the water from getting down to the soil, and the prairie got a little bit better. And they said, oh, that's cool. What else do we used to have? Wolves and Indians. We had predators. We had people that were coming to eat the bison. So they started culling the herd. And then, magically, without any effort, the prairie chicken showed back up. And I learned when I was at Kansas State University where you can get a PhD in prairie chicken. Not kidding, you can get a PhD in studying the prairie chicken. That a prairie chicken needs 4 heights of pasture, or 4 heights of prairie during its lifetime. And it's either 4 or 0. It's got to have all 4. So in these little short prairies, when it's a chick, and then it's got to hide, and got to have a place to nest, and a place to winter. I don't understand it, but it's 4. And with the combined action of bison and fire, and moving the bison like a predator would cause them to move, only now they do it with poly rope, just like Mr. Joel Salatin. Right? I heard it first at the Tallgrass National Prairie, though. By doing that, the 4 heights of prairie come back, the prairie chicken comes back, the native fauna, the animals, they all come back. And all you have to do is manage the prairie in as natural a way as possible. And the same is true for all grasslands. This is how we do it on our farm. We've got 10 to 20 acre permanent paddocks that we subdivide with polywire nets depending on what it is we're managing. We move the cows and sheep once a week. All right, within our little sub paddocks are divisions. They're never more than 300 yards from a water, or 300 feet from a water source. So we're able to get water into the paddock, so we're able to confine the animals fairly tightly. And they've got water and they've got food, everything they need. And when grass grows, there's a little grass growth curve. Starts off real slow, then it takes off, and then it plateaus off. Kind of like people. All right, we all grow really fast when we're young, and that's what we want to do with the grass. Right there between that top line and bottom line is where we want the cows to bite the grass. We want them to bite it when it's growing. We want them to bite it once, and then we want them to move on and bite somewhere else. We don't want to bite the grass more than twice, and we certainly don't want to bite it below that bottom line. We want to keep the grass at least 3 to 4 inches long, because the grasses we have here, that's where they store their energy, is in that bottom 3 to 4 inches. So we want to keep that stuff able to grow, that stored energy there, so that it keeps pushing up new vegetation up on the top. Our rest periods for our grass are in the neighborhood of months in most cases. All right, so a given area will be grazed 2 or 3 times a year, and that's it. All right, I'm going to pause. I'm going to end it right here with the second section of the video, and we will be back with third. Oh, I'm sorry, I got lost. I'm not ending it right here. What this has done on our farm: soil ecology and biodiversity. You can't put a shovel in the ground without hitting an earthworm in the spring. They're all over the place. That center picture is a dung beetle eating up a cow pie. We got dung beetles all over the place. That picture on the left is roots. Putting in a new septic system, we're doing the evaluation. The roots go down 3 feet. You know, they get smaller as they go down, but they are down 3 feet. Right? And that soil is very loose, very aerated. You don't notice any compacted layer. And then there's a picture on the lower right. There's that snowflake and one of her calves. That grass is, that's late April grass. There's orchard grass and fescue and 3 or 4 different kinds of clover. There's more stuff than I can count in there. Huge biodiversity of the plants, both grasses and legumes, and a few weeds, which are really just goat forages, in the same pasture. Here's our energy budget. Just did a really thumbnail calculation. Past few years we've been getting 900 pounds of beef. That's just pure meat, that bones out, and 400 gallons of milk. At how many kilocalories per unit? We are making about 2 million kilocalories of food, of food energy. The energy inputs to do that that's half of the electric bill for the farm, and the 40 gallons of gas, which is 4 trips to and from the butcher, take those cows to and from the butcher. And we're using just under 2 million kilocalories of energy in that regard. So kilocalories a unit of energy. Normally we do gas and electric in terms of BTUs or kilowatt hours, but you can do it in kilocalories. And so we're getting out about what we're putting in. Is it very scientific? No, but unless you want to pay me a lot of money to spend a lot of time studying it, that's about the best you're going to get out of me. But you can do that same level of thumbnail calculation for any type of system. How many calories are we getting out for the calories that we're putting in? And all this hippie stuff, it's true. Okay, just pull this graphic, pull any of these graphics up. They're true. I will tell you that everything that's written down here, I have observed on my farm. Right? That grazing field provides safe habitat for birds and other wildlife. We got all sorts of, we got bobwhite quail on the farm. Didn't do anything other than quit mowing everything. Left some habitat for the bobwhite. They just showed up. We got foxes, we're not so sure about them, but we let them live. Groundhogs, skunks, just everything. And all we did was manage the land in a very natural way. I want you to compare these two. There's that picture again. Bark Solar Field, which is across the road, across Fredericksburg Road, used to be a part of our farm. Right? Before we owned it, Bark purchased that side and we purchased this side. Those pictures taken on the same day, within a day or two of each other maybe. And you tell me which one of those pieces of ground has better water retention, better habitat for wildlife, better habitat for pollinators, right? Better carbon sequestration, better production. Please don't call it a solar farm. It is a utility scale power plant. It doesn't grow anything, which is what farms do. It's a solar utility scale power plant. These two things are within 200 yards of each other. Something interesting to think about. All right, now we're going to stop. Come back for part 3.